Howdy do, I am Gamrison, and for this video we're just going to go over the different ways that I make thumbnails in Photoshop without plugins. So if you're someone that's been kind of wanting to do that and you stumbled across this video for that and you don't have plugins because you're either afraid of plugins or you're afraid of getting the virus or you just don't want to use them, whatever the case is, this would be a no plugin kind of Photoshop thumbnail video that I've been meaning to make for a while and is in part thanks to Steam for the idea somewhat too. So that being said, real quick, I want to thank people that have been here from the shadow video. I got a lot more positive of a reception than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting like a super negative response, but a lot of people ended up liking that video. So thank you. And so here's like a way to kind of give back a little bit if you're someone that's interested in making thumbnails. So the first strategy we're going to talk about is having this blank canvas. So this blank canvas is in fact 1920 by 1080. I don't know if that really actually matters or helps with the resolution, but I know when you upload things like banners on YouTube or thumbnails and stuff, there's certain sizes it gives you kind of recommended. So I kind of tend to work with this kind of a canvas. The first thing I do when we have this blank canvas, and this is just out of habit, you don't have to do this part, but depending on the type of thumbnail I'm making, I usually make the background black. That way, if for some reason I don't line up something perfectly, it's a dark enough color that it kind of doesn't really give away something's there. But for this first type of thumbnail, we're going to just be making a simple using an image as the thumbnail. Let's say there's a screenshot from the video or the game you played, and that's just kind of what you want to have be the thumbnail. This is how you would do that. First, get a screenshot. Now, since we play a lot of Final Fantasy XIV, we're going to use that for an example. I'll be right back. Here's a screenshot. It's Capstan sitting on her mount, sitting on my head, sitting on my mount, sitting on top of the building, right? Cool. So on the left side here, you are going to see, it depends what it might be defaulted on, but it should be defaulted on the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool. You can also change the size of this circle here with a little plus in it, with this over here. So size, hardness, things like that. We're just going to kind of go back and forth over the whole image until it's bordered like this, meaning it's grabbed the whole image in case you're absolutely new to this. What you can then do is go Control C for control copy, go back to that blank canvas and go Control V. Now, it's not going to fill up the whole thing by itself. How do you do that? Control T is the transform tool, and you can do different things with the transform tool, to be honest. But if you want to resize the whole image at the same time without, like, accidentally stretching it one way or the other, hit Shift and then grab one of the corners, and it'll keep basically the scale for the whole time. For the sake of this, though, if you want to just kind of drag this into a corner and then grab like the sides here and then fill out the canvas, and then boom, you hit enter when you're done to undo the transform tool to finish it and kind of just snap it into place there, and then boom, that's an example of a screenshot thumbnail given from screenshots from the game that you're playing. So that could be like an example. We're going to delete that, go back to the black canvas. Why? Because let's say you want to get an image from the internet. Like, let's say you were doing the Space Colony arc. We just talked about Shadow the Hedgehog. We didn't really go into the arc specifically too much itself. It was like at the beginning of the video, but really the arc is kind of like its own deep dive. Let's say that you wanted a picture of the Space Colony arc, but you didn't have one on your computer, so you didn't know how. There was no files to open on your computer. How would you get one? Google. And you can actually take images off of Google Images and slap them right into Photoshop. Watch this. Google Images, Space Colony arc. That's funny enough. That's my Minecraft video of the Space Colony arc. That's kind of cool. I don't think I've seen that happen before. The very first image, right? Here's the first image. You would go right click, go down to copy image, then go back into Photoshop, and then you would still hit Control V, and it'll pop the image up. Now, obviously, depending on the size of the image, and stretching it or shrinking it might be necessary, but that is what you can do then to have an image off of the internet if you don't have the image you desire already. I'm actually guilty of doing that a little bit for a couple things where I wanted just a higher resolution image of something that maybe I already had, but it wasn't like the greatest quality. And then boom, that's kind of how you do like the simplistic thumbnail, where it's like we're just taking image, dropping image, saving that, and then calling that the thumbnail. Let's say you want to do some more though. So for this next one, it's going to be back from the old League of Legends days when I first was doing Let's Talk Jinx back in 2016, every single Wednesday since. Creator burnout is real. So first things first, what I used to do is I used to use Jinx's splash art as the starting image. So we'll go grab that. So again, when you open an image, the quick select tool, you can scan all of it like that real quick. Just grab it all up, Control C, Control V. Boom. That's how you would start it off. Now here's a couple things to do, right? Like let's say that's the size, but we kind of wanted it closer. You can go beyond the border real quick. So if I do the transform tool and I'm like, I want Jinx and Fishbones to be a bit more front and center. You can do that and you can grab it and stretch. What the heck? Don't do that. And stretch that a bit. Maybe I just want Jinx kind of like right there even. Like I want you to know it's Jinx, but I want Jinx to be closer. Boom. And then you hit enter. That's not a border that will stop you. You can stretch the image to the end of time. Just keep note, the smaller the resolution of the image is and the more you stretch it, the more the quality will start to be lost as you stretch it. Versus having bigger images and shrinking them, that's usually totally fine. Text is something that people can use on images, and for Let's Talk Jinx, it's no exception. Now, one thing I'll go over, because we're going to constantly use this too, is the brightness and contrast tools, depending. So if you go to images, there should be a tab in the top left called images, or yeah, image. Drop down to adjustments, which should just be the second one down, and go into brightness and contrast. The reason is because that will adjust how, saturated or let's say desaturated, or how bright or dark the actual image is. Maybe you're not going to want to use that for this specific example, but it's nice to know, and we will be using that in future examples for certain thumbnails. So let's say I up the contrast a bit, and I up the brightness like a little bit. That's kind of how League thumbnails used to be made, is you kind of like bleach it, and you go like full in like that. We'll just go like, 69. Nice. But you wanted text. So you have Jinx on this side, text on this side. So along the left-hand side should be a T for text. That's what it usually is in most softwares, and Photoshop is no exception. But in case you've never used anything like that before, it should just look like a letter T, straight up. Up here, you can control like the color if you want. Over down here, you can also control the color if you want to do gradient stuff. There's also a third way to do that, which I'll get into if you have no idea what gradient means. Let's just swap this to white for now, just so we can see the text, okay? So let's say we're going to call it Jinx, okay? That's it. That's all we want to do. We just want to call it Jinx. Now, in a big view like Photoshop, this might look okay. I know my camera's a little bit in the way, so let me move this down, maybe like down here a little bit, right? In a big window like this, it might look okay. But keep in mind, one of the things I want to stress is that a lot of people watch YouTube on mobile. So this is not going to be how big the thumbnail is when they come across it. Even on YouTube itself, this is not going to be how big the thumbnail is if it even pops up in someone's recommended. But especially on mobile, it's going to be a lot more tiny. So we can't make the text, if we want it to be seen like this. Like we might be able to read that here, but you're not going to be able to read that on a mobile screen very easily. Two things as well, and Graphic can attest to this as well, as a matter of fact, speaking of other artists and stuff. If you're gonna have text, one thing, because especially how small of a screen people might be reading stuff on, make sure it's not relatively the same color as the background. So if I took Jinx over here, and let's do the brightness thing just for the sake of making the background dark, all right? So it's just so we can make the background dark. Let's turn the brightness down to there. Obviously, you really can't see Jinx, and obviously that's not probably what you would do. But because it's a dark background, we can use light colors for the text because it's going to contrast a bit. And vice versa. If you're using dark letters for the text, try and use, a brighter background perhaps. So it's able to be read. However, there are some other tools we can use too, and I'm going to show you for the text itself. So once you're on the text layer over here on the right side, right? Pun intended. You can go to layers, layer style, and here you can add things to the text to maybe help it stand out a bit more too. Like for example, maybe you throw on a drop shadow. I tend to like to turn the opacity to 100, turn the angle to 90, doesn't really matter too much. Distance 0, but like maybe put the spread. You can't quite see it because it's dark on dark at the moment, but the spread and the size kind of gives it a border. Now you can definitely see it. It gives it a border a bit. Maybe that's kind of the idea you want to do. You can go the opposite, where you keep the spread low and you keep the size big, and you can't again really see it too well, but now it has like a dark shadow behind it. So if the background was lighter, you'd actually see this dark shadow behind it, and that's an option too. So let me get a light background in here real quick. Distance 0, so we put the spread like maybe like a 20, and then we bump the size way up. That's how you get like a dark shadow. So if you wanted to use white text on a white background, just maybe like use a drop shadow, because now you can see it, and that's an idea. How the other way looked, for example, was like this, and we had like 10. There's a border. Again, on a small screen, it still might be hard to see, but that's just drop shadow. You can do things like glow. So I'll go back to this and swap this back. So make the spread kind of low, make this kind of big, but then we're gonna get a glow effect on the word Jinx. And let's say it's gonna be red, because we like the color red around here. A little bit of a bias, and then you can adjust that, and you can make the red, make it really pop even more, or you can make it small. Inner glow. I don't know how well it's going to show up on this, but usually like the corners and stuff kind of have like an inner glow based on the color that you're using. So if we also swap this to red, can't really see it too well, but there's that. A final thing you could try using too is stroke. It's basically like a border. Whatever the text is, it'll be bordered to the text, and then you can change the color of that too. So if you want to make the color of this the pinkish, kind of the hot pink color that Jinx uses for her graffiti, that could be an option for that. That's different ways to kind of do text, specifically on dark background light or light on dark background, that could be helpful for you. Obviously you can do multiple words, so we did Jinx. We go back to text over here and we could type like another word, like literally the word word. You can't see it right now because it's white on white. So for the sake of, I'm gonna get rid of this. So word, Jinx, boom, that's how it works. And then of course, if you want to line the sizes of the words up, I didn't explain that earlier, it's still the transform tool. So Control T, that's how you would move this around, or you can make it smaller and bigger. Again, hold shift if you drag the corners to make the whole thing stay its same size, like resolution. If you want to bring word down here, plop it on top of Jinx like that, right there. And then again, Control T for the transform tool, boom, word Jinx. I don't know what the heck that means, but for the sake of this example, that's how you would do that. So that's kind of a more simplistic, here's the thumbnail, here's basically a simple image, and then here's some word text on the side that maybe people will read, and it'll try and draw them into wanting to click on your video. Not clickbait, but you do gotta entice people to wanna watch your video after all, or else what's the point? So for this example, I'm going to be doing what I call a blurred background. Now, VR chat specifically kind of lends itself to this a little bit because some worlds have things like bloom and stuff, which is why we're about to use this screenshot from an example back from 2021. It was like the 4th VR chat video we ever did, as a matter of fact. So using this as an example for 2 reasons. One is because Lucy gave me that screenshot or the picture that we're going to be using for the next example, so it's just going to roll into itself. It's going to be nice. But 2, I'm going to talk about the pen tool now. The pen tool can be very useful. If you've ever tried to extract something out of an image, let me undo this. Let me try and grab Lucy from the screenshot, right? It will kind of work, but one thing you're going to notice immediately is between the avatars, like say the dark jacket and stuff, and like the walls being the walls being jark, it's not quite grabbing just her. It's kind of grabbing some parts of the background. And obviously you can use, if you go up to the quick selection tool, there's the negative wand. So that's how you can kind of try and erase stuff and get around that a bit. And it can work, but it kind of can be a back and forth, and you got to maybe zoom in, and it's going to take some time. And then hair becomes a really complicated part of the process. So what we're going to do instead is use the pen tool, which, while the pen tool can also be time consuming, it's also going to be very accurate. I'm going to show you what I mean. So first, we're going to grab this image, okay? And we're going to plop it on to our canvas. Let's say we were redoing that thumbnail from that VR chat video, okay? Let's say for some reason that's what we wanted to do. We're just going to boom like this. This was going to be it, right? So what the pen tool allows you to do, by the way, and it should be above the text tool, so the T, when you hover over stuff, it also should give you the name of it as well. But if you don't, or you hover over something and it has a little like black arrow in the right corner, press and hold left, and it'll bring up, or it should bring up other options in there too. So pen tool, freeform, whatever the heck that was. A lot of these tend to have that. So like that's how I got the magic eraser tool, because it's the same as the eraser tool, blah, blah, the coloring tools and stuff like that. So for this, we want the pen tool. Why? First and foremost, in my opinion, what you want to do is make sure you have the image that you're going to want to cut out already on the canvas and have it sized and stuff. Otherwise, for this effect to work perfectly, you're going to have to try and line it up later, which as now, it'll line up just fine. This is also going to be a pretty sloppy version of this because we're going to try and make this a bit quicker because, you know, people have things to do in life. But you would start at a corner, like the corner of her arm over here. We'll just make this a very quick, rough version, but you would go like this. If you had more time on your hands, you would like zoom in and be a lot more accurate than I'm being right now. But you kind of just would follow along the edge of whatever it is you're trying to pen tool out. So for here, it's a person, but for, you know, it could be an object. It could be like the arc when we had earlier, if I was trying to pen tool that out of that image, and we kind of go around and round, and I'm not going to go through the hair, but we'll just, it's just to give you an idea of what this look like the pen tool looks like first before I show you what I call like the Cotton 4K thing. I did it with Monokuma once in a thumbnail. That was pretty fun. I'm kind of rushing this one right now. There's a reason I'm rushing this one too, though. I'm going to show you something pretty cool in a second. But we go all the way around the edges, essentially. Boom, boom. And then the arm. Should be roughly here. Cool. It's not going to be clean, but the pen tool allows you to be clean. I'm just not being clean right now for the sake of this example. And then you just run maybe like one over here. Cool. So when you have that all pinned out, okay, you go to like the center. You don't have to go to the center of the image, but make sure you're within the border of the image, okay? Right click, and it'll say something called Make Selection. When you do that, you can leave the feather radius. I tend to turn that 1, just leave everything else, hit OK. Now it's like the quick selection tool on everything you took the time to pin. So we zoom out, and guess what we can do? We can go Control, Copy, Control, Paste. And then if I got rid of the background image, this is what we just trimmed out. And so now, and that's the thing too, depending on the game, depending on your resolution, depending on the screen caps you might be taking, or screenshots, whatever you want to call it, the resolution might be really good in screenshots but not video. That's one thing I've noticed with a lot of my videos too. If I try and screen something out of a video itself, it's pretty bad. But if I try and take a screenshot of something like in-game, it's pretty good. That's why in Final Fantasy videos you hear a lot of the camera going off, because if I later go back to try and screenshot that like from the recording, it's kind of If I screenshot it while I'm in-game, it tends to be pretty high quality. We're gonna get rid of that. You'll be like, well, that's a waste of time. No, it's not. I already did this like a while ago in preparation for this video, so I have a better version done already over here, where I actually did go like through the hair strands and stuff, and it does take time, but it depends how like quality you want yours to be. So because of the perfectionism in me, I already have this one done. Here's the blur effect, because now this Lucy's on the top, right? And then this Lucy's in the back. So what we can do now is we can edit this back video without worrying about ruining any of this whatsoever. So we can go to this back layer, we can go to filter, go down to blur. I like to use Gaussian blur. And let's say we make that like 10, right? What you'll notice is now it kind of looks like if it was a camera, it's like focused on her and it kind of blurred the background a bit. That it's not the most professional looking, of course, of camera blurs, but it is something you can do, obviously, like I said, with no plugins and stuff like that. So that means that, as you see, if I hide the top layer where the Lucy is that we cut out, this is all blurred. But it's like, well, then you can't see anything. What's the point? We'll use the pen tool or something to bring something out to the forefront, and then you can blur the background, and you can have the foreground, and there you go. We're not quite done with this one. This one we're going to do a couple things with. I'm going to show you how to do a couple things. Because let's say you've seen streamers, either their cameras or you see thumbnails where it has like the two colors to one side or the other of like the background, but not the foreground necessarily. Now we have something we can work with. We can basically do stuff here. So when you come over here as an excuse to talk about this and you want to create a new layer, let's go to the blur one, which is layer 1, right? Down here, it looks like a square with a square in the bottom like left corner. That's how it should be. That's how you would create a new layer, okay? Now for that specific thing that I'm talking about, let's take the colors. What are the colors? It's usually like cyan and what, like violet or hot pink or whatever. It's usually like the colors used, even in like in Blender tools and stuff like that, right? So for this, we'll take our color down here on the bottom left hand side. We'll make it that, you know, like light blue color that we kind of see used. We'll make this other one this violet color that we kind of see used, right? Now what we want to do is back on the left side here, right? There should be what looks like a fill bucket. It might actually be gradient tool, but if you press and hold, again, right click, it'll bring up gradient tool and paint bucket tool. Use the paint bucket tool and just splash the color in there. Now you might be like, what are you doing? That's ruined now. Hang on, we're getting there. Now, if you go to filter, you're gonna want to scroll down and you're looking for in the render, I believe it's actually in sketch. Yes, there we go. So it's in alphabetical order too. So artistic, blur, etc. Go down to sketch. Go to what's called bas relief. What it's going to do is it's going to take the whatever two colors you have in there. So since we have the blue and the violet color, that's what it's doing. And it's going to make it half and half from the background. You can control which direction and which colors are where over on the right side. So it says where it says light specifically. So right now it's like top. So we can go like left. And it'll actually put like the violet on one side and the blue on the other. Let's say you wanted the blue on the other side, you just go, you know, right. So it's the blue over here and the violet over there. You can go, you know, bottom left. You can do all these things. For the sake of, we're going to do this. And by doing this, we've now created those two colors. But hold on, we can't see the background still. This is a problem, isn't it? Not exactly. On the right hand side, whenever you're on a layer, there should be options right above the layers, like fill 100%, normal, opacity 100%. Take the opacity and then lower that. It depends how much you want to lower it. Obviously, if you lower it to 0, it's not going to be there anymore. But then depending on how much or how little you do that, that's now where you can see the background. Now, the blur tool, ugh. So let's say I did it 20%, and let's say I didn't want the background blurred anymore, so let's just insert a non-blurred version of the background so you can see this a little better. And we're so back. So this specific, at least in my opinion, it can work with the blurred version, right? Like this is the blurred version. It still works, but in my opinion, if you're gonna do this one specifically, where you want like the multicolored background, don't blur the background. Because I just think it could just be in the eyes of the beholder situation, but I just think if you're going to do that, it works better to have the background actually be able to be visible, because then you still use the pen tool to bring whoever the focus is, so in this case Lucy, to the front, so they're still fine, and then you can still have the background and you can still have the colors, and it's kind of like they're in like a streaming studio, I guess, and you can again use different colors. We use those two colors, but we can hide that layer. Again, the square tool with the little square in the bottom left, create new layer. Let's say we wanted to use red and blue, you know, classic red and blue, red versus blue even, given recent news. Again, in the new layer, use the drop tool to make the background. It looks a little funky. Filter, sketch, bas relief, and then depending on how you want it, do you want left, right? You want, let's go right this time. It doesn't really matter too much, but let's do that, right? Boom, and then opacity, which should be at the top of all the layers here. And then you drag that around until you're satisfied. So let's say I wanted it, this time it's going to be 28%. Why not? And then boom, that's how you do that. But wait, there's more. Unfortunately, this video has to be long because I'm going to walk through like every single style of thumbnail instead of doing like one style of thumbnail a video. Let's say you kind of like this. Let's say this was kind of all right. But let's say if we merge all these layers by left clicking, you know, control, you know, so go to the top layer, hit shift, and then go to the bottom layer. It should highlight all of the layers. Right click, merge layers into one. And let's say when we zoomed out, we were like, you know, Lucy doesn't quite pop out amongst the background like we would have liked her to. Remember all this stuff I taught you earlier? We can put that into play on people, not just text. So we'll go to the Lucy layer. All right, let's say we wanted to make her brighter. We wanted her to be bright in contrast with the background because it's kind of dark. First things first, you can still mess around with brightness and contrast if you want. Turn the contrast down, but turn the brightness up. Or maybe turn the contrast down, keep the brightness up. That's terrifying. Never mind, never again. And you can mess with stuff like that. And there's a little preview button so you can see what it looks like as you're messing with it. Another way to do that without those two is go to adjustments. Under brightness and contrast is levels, and then the far most left one, so the black arrow, oh no, never again, but that will turn things darker. And then the rightmost one, of course, as you might imagine, is the opposite, so it will brighten things quite a bit. That is horrifying. And then the middle one is if you want more of like an in-between situation. It's not working the best for this specific example because I used the red and the blue too, so it's not like the best, but there's some levers you can adjust if you want to take something and kind of maybe like quote unquote like bake it or make it brighter like the Jinx one that we did earlier, right? So let's say for the sake of, we were like, boom, this works, click. I'm going to swap the background to the streaming one though. It contrasts a little bit more. There's still more we can do. First of all, I'm going to undo that. So if you hit Control Alt and then Z or Z, whichever one you use, right? That's how you will undo the last thing you did. You can keep pressing that to undo more stuff as well. Go back to the layer that Lucy's on. As a matter of fact, we're going to name, I have to name layers. It's been bothering me this whole time. I need to name layers. No, go away. Let me name the layer. Go to layers, and all the things that we talked about on text also work on any object that has its own layer. So let's say we wanted Lucy to have a drop shadow. So we can do this. We can kind of give her a bit of a drop shadow. We can spread that even. If anything, with images, I feel like it works even better than with text if we want to do like an outer glow. So let's say we want the outer glow. Here's the color, and here's how we change it right there. Let's say we wanted to grab this, I'm colorblind, so pink, purple. We wanted to grab that color. And then with the sliders, that's how you adjust the color too. So let's say we wanted that color to like really glow like that. Let's say, and I've talked about this with the art friends. Art friends, you know this one. If you ever grabbed an image out and there were still like rough edges, then that's when you can also use the inner glow to kind of hide those a bit. Let's say we grab the same color. So use the same color for both if you want to. And by kind of putting that inner, you don't really see any rough edges anymore because the glow is kind of taking up people's attention, if you will. Let's turn that down a little bit though, right? And then for the stroke color, you can go like white. If you want like that glow effect, you can do all kinds of colors. We'll do white for this. I just leave the size on 3. But as you notice with the stroke effect, it's kind of, I like to say, fuzzy. There's a way we can get rid of that for free. Go to the eraser tool. Left click on it to bring up the magic eraser tool. Now make sure when you do this though, you do not click on the image itself. What you want to do is click around the image. So we don't want to click Lucy to make this work. We want to click just around Lucy. But if we just spam some clicks, it kind of starts trimming that fuzziness down a bit. It's going to depend a bit on the image you're using too. This one's an okay resolution. The one she gave us that we're going to use in a second is actually a lot better. But if you ever want to kind of basically smooth that out, it's not smooth enough and you want to smooth that out, click around the image but not on the image with the magic erase tool, which you can find at eraser, or in which case you left click if you need to. Eraser tool, background eraser, magic erase tool, and you kind of just spam that. So before we go to the next style of thumbnail, one thing I'm going to show you is eyes and glowing. A lot of VR chat avatars specifically have emissions, I think is the word that I'm looking for. And so these eyes, they kind of glow, at least with this specific screenshot. But let's say we wanted to make them glow a bit more. Create a new layer, all right? This is just one way of doing this. It's not the only way of doing this. I've talked about this a little bit before. You're going to want to go to the brush tool, okay? If you don't want it to make a solid color, like this is solid red right now, that's not exactly what we want to do at all, right? You can go up to here and you can change the different kind of brushes that you use. The first one is kind of the more fuzzy one that kind of looks more like that. We're not turning her into a Terminator, mind you, but you can also adjust the size here. You can adjust the hardness even when you're on the softer ones, etc. That's all here to control. So let's say we go and grab the color of Lucy's eye in this one by using the dropper tool, the eyedropper tool, right? Let's grab this color right here. Then we go back to the brush tool, right? Let's resize it a little bit. You know, there we go. And we go, boom. Now that looks a little weird by itself, I know. Maybe you can do it more times or not. But I wanted to tell you, just like with text and just like with images, as long as it's its own layer, you can adjust things on this too. So if we go back to layer, we go back to layer style, you guessed it. If we wanted to, we could put a drop shadow on it. Now, because it's supposed to be light, like emission and light and stuff, I tend to avoid drop shadows on things that I want to glow. But outer glow and inner glow can still be very useful. So let's go outer glow. Let's go grab that color from the eye so it's the same. For this one, you can have fun. You can make the spread go super wide. You can make the spread stay close. It could be no spread, so it's all focused kind of really on just the eye itself. I kind of like to do a little bit of like a halo by moving the size up about 100%. The spread is where you kind of get that happening, where it just kind of bleeds a lot more than you probably want. So I tend to leave the spread at 0, opacity at 100. Inner glow can work too. If you want, like let's say I want the inner glow to be kind of that same color also. You don't really need it for this one to work, in my opinion. And then that's it. Just outer glow, call it good. Now, two things. One, you can leave that as is. Or two, depending, you could also throw another one on top of that. So just make a new layer. Make it maybe slightly smaller if you want to. And then throw white on top of that. So that's how they do it whenever you've seen, like, if you've ever seen a YouTube thumbnail where it's like a red eye, but the listener is kind of white, that's how they do that. You drop down whatever color you want to use. If it's red, yellow, green, indigo, rainbow, go for it. And then you put a smaller white one in the center of that. And then you can still do the same things. You can doctor it up, you could not. So for the sake of this, I'm going to hide this layer first. Again, so it's kind of covering her eye though. That's weird. We've just blinded her. That's rude. Opacity, and then you drag the opacity down and you adjust it until you're satisfied with what you kind of want it to look like. So if it's like kind of like that, if it's kind of like that, if it's kind of like that. One thing to note is depending on how light or dark the color you use is, that will affect it. So if it's ever like just too bright, go back over the process again and use like a darker shade of the color, or vice versa. If it's too dark, go back over it again, use a lighter shade of the color, and that should work out. And then of course you put the white one on top, and then you can adjust the opacity of that one too. Like boom, boom. And then we zoom back out, and that's an example. And so it looks a bit better once we zoom back out too, by the way. So make sure before you go, man, that looks horrible, maybe just try zooming out just to make sure, and then zoom back in if you need to. And then there's that one. So that's an example of how to make that thumbnail with a two-tone color background. Remember, that's bas relief. I think that's how it's pronounced. Probably not. I don't really care, because my job is to get things wrong, to make other people sound smarter. Here we go. That's one way you can do that. There's the blurred background again, which was if we take all of these off. And so here's the thing, the effects can kind of work with the blurred background. I think it looks better when you don't do that. But let's say it's all a bit too dark. So let's get rid of all that. Let's get rid of all of that. And let's say this is what we want. You can merge the layers, so that way when you do this, it's done together. And then you can just go back to images and you can brighten them all together. So that way the effect will still stay, but the images are in fact together. Ta-da. That is, no, that, never mind, I forgot. No, we can't do that one. That one's illegal. So, now that that's done, next style of thumbnail. So again, here's a screenshot. This is from my birthday in VR chat in 2022. We all hung out in there, and there's one moment where we started busting out all the OG avatars. Again, Control-C for copy, go over to your thing, Control-Paste, and then Control-T to resize things. Just transform, kind of just snap it to the thing. Now the background doesn't matter too much for this. I'm just going to show you why having different like resolutions and things for the images you're putting in can be very helpful. We're going to use the Lucy image now for this one, as a matter of fact. She might remember this one. Hold on. Yeah, it was this one. She even put a green screen behind it, which is nice. When you have something like that, you can just kind of use the magic erase tool and it'll nuke an entire color, and it just took out all the green. And the nice thing about this image is actually already 1920 by 1080. It was sideways. I rotated it, but it's basically the same resolution as the canvas we're going to be using. So you're going to notice when I go and we, again, Control-C, and we kind of plop this on in here, it's just nice and big. And the nice thing about that is it's big enough that we can even make it bigger if we wanted to. Like, if we wanted to make the sides here line up right with the entire canvas. Let's say this video specifically, you're making a video and it was just all about her. So there we go. Put that right there. Boom. It didn't really lose like any quality because it's pretty high already in size. So that's very useful. And the thing about big images, to remind you too, is that when you want to shrink them, they don't really lose their quality, like the hair strands and stuff, the shine on the hair. It's not really lost because it's already a relatively big image. So we've kind of gathered some of those over the years. Even on New Year's, Graphic and Battle stood in front of the green screen that was in the New Year's world, and we took a couple shots there. Like, that's actually very useful if you ever have that opportunity, like you're using friends and their avatars for thumbnails and stuff. Because like using the pen tool can work too, but let's say I wanted to use the pen tool here. This screenshot, it's nice, but the more we zoom in, it's going to lose its quality. So it's not like what we're going to cut out. It's not going to be the best. Let's put it that way, especially the people that are more in the back than in the front. So it can always be nice to have something like that there, in which case we could just walk through everything again, just for a real quick, you know, drop shadow. I like putting the size up high and then upping the spread as need be. Outer glow, a nice red. I'm very biased, as you might notice, to the color red. This one doesn't have any like rough ends, so it doesn't really need to do this, but you know, for the sake of. We'll do the red a little bit on the inside. You can go as far as you want. I just like doing only like a little bit. Stroke. When I use red and red, I kind of like using yellow. Kind of almost looks like a nice fiery line, by the way. That's just more of a color scheme thing. It's just preference and also whatever image you're working on at the time too. But that's one of the nice things about, again, so if you ever have you're making your own thumbnails and you're like, I kind of need a higher quality image for such and such and da-da-da, that can be very helpful. And so this is like the one Lucy did after I did. It's one of the friendship videos, I think. And so she sent me this one and I was like, cool, thanks. That actually works really well whenever I'm making VR chat videos. And I'm like, cool, we need to put people in the thumbnail. So for this next one, it's more like what I like to call the sticker style. One thing you can do on an image is you can go drop shadow, right? You're not really going to be able to see it if I don't put a better background. So let's put like a blue background, okay? go to your image, right? Style, drop shadow. Up the opacity, drop the distance, up the spread all the way, and then you up the size to like at least 10. Probably can go even higher than that. So, you know, go to like 15 even, right? A little rough around the edges. When it's rough around the edges like this, again, that magic erase tool will work a bit. Not always, but sometimes. And then what you do, though, is you go stroke, change the color to white, and then up the size on that as well. You don't want to make it bigger than the drop shadow, which is why you want the drop shadow, the size, to actually be like, let's say 20, because then you make the stroke size a good, say, you know, 10. And what it does is it kind of creates this like sticker look. That's kind of how a lot of League thumbnails were made back in like 2016, 2017, when you would see that. That's kind of how they would do that. But speaking of old days of League of Legends thumbnails, let's take this picture of Yasuo real quick, and I'll show you like the kind of the baking. We did it with Jinx like a little bit, but if I was actually baking something, you'll contrast, turn the contrast all the way up, and you turn the brightness not necessarily all the way up, but quite a bit up, like probably in the 80s before you would really see the results you want. Hit OK on that. Go back to images, adjustment, levels, and then you mess with these a bit until you feel satisfied. Like maybe you want to turn the middle part down, you want to turn all of it down, you want to turn all of it up. You don't want to leave everything fine but the middle. You want to just turn the middle up by itself, like that. Boom. There you go. But let's say you wanted the text to be two-tone. That was another thing about like League YouTube back then. There was always those texts that was like yellow and like orangish at the same time. So let's say we were making a thumbnail and we were making text and we were like, patch. We'll just patch. Patch is good enough for this. Some of the same things you can still do, right? So first of all, you can get the drop shadow on there if you want. You don't necessarily have to. Spread, why not? Okay, so what you do is you ignore all the things like glow and stuff, and you come down towards the bottom to an option called gradient overlay. Now there's a couple ways to control what exactly happens here, but one is you hit the arrow and whatever two colors you already have down here, if it's good enough, you can just click that first one and it'll change the image to be like that, and then you can adjust the scale of it. Do you want it more half and half like that? Do you want it to kind of bleed together so it's almost one color? Or do you want it kind of in that middle space where it's like bleeding into the other? There's another way you can change the colors though, so they don't have to be pre-changed, is you just click on the colors right here in the window when it shows up. And by doing that, what it should do is it'll bring up this window, the gradient editor. All you have to do is go down to the bottom here. So go to this yellow, for example. Let's say I want it to be red. Do like that, click OK, now suddenly it's red. Go to the other side if you want to adjust the other color. Let's say I want the other color to be blue. So now it's, I don't want it to be blue, it's bleeding over too much. Yellow, we'll keep it yellow. So then that's how you would do that. You can change the colors just kind of right here, so you don't have to have these like pre-done already. And then you could scale it depending, again, how you want it to be scaled. Do you want it to be like super, like horizon almost? Do you want it to be like boom, like that? There you go. I usually leave it at 100, but it depends on you and how you kind of want to do that. Next thumbnail style, bleeding stuff together. I do it mostly in my Final Fantasy thumbnails, but I'll show you how to do that yourself. No plugins. Watch this. Okay, a long time ago now, we went to like that one world with the frogs that we were collecting, and everyone had tongues, and it was weird. That's what I originally cropped this image of Digi out from, was this, as well as this image of Zabel when they were using the Chiaki, like Among Us one, and then this classic one you might remember of Lucy, when then I put the gun on there later, which was a mistake, but I put a gun on all of these. So let's say we use these three images, right? So we have our blank black canvas still. The first thing we want to do, of course, is let's say this first one we're going to put in the middle, okay? Specifically because Digi's kind of standing in the middle, so it kind of makes it a little easier to do that. So we put the image in, you know, control, paste, resize it, and for the sake of it, I'm going to actually make it a little bit bigger so that he's a little bit bigger in the image. That's step one. Step two is you grab the next one. So let's say this one, we're going to, you know, obviously grab that up, Control C, pop that over to the side, and you might be like, well, you're covering stuff. How are you supposed to do anything? You no longer can see Digi. What is going on there? Here's what you're gonna do. Depending on what side you want the image on, of course. So I'm gonna want Zabel over here on this side when we do this. I'm gonna move this about there, and it's still covering. I know. It's supposed to for this. When you have your images set like that, go over to layer. Go down and you're looking for something called layer mask. You're going to want to hit reveal all. And you know you've done it correctly when there's like a little chain that appears on the layer and then a white square. Now, go to the paint bucket. There should have been or should be something called the gradient tool. And then your little cursor is going to become like a little, kind of like a little cross situation. Go back to this, make sure you're on the right layer. Go off the layer though, so like over here on this side of the image. Grab and hold, and then drag the line all the way over as far as you want. Depends on how much you want it to bleed or not, so that's going to vary depending on you. But I'm gonna crank it like all the way over here. And then boom, it kind of fades out all of that. There's still like a line that's in the middle that's a bit of a problem, and now Zabel's kind of been nuked quite a bit, and that's a bit of a problem. We can fix that. Before you click off the layer, do not click off the layer yet, right? Go back up to image. Go to adjustments and go to levels. Levels works a little differently if it's in this specific scenario. As you're going to notice in the levels bar, there's like just a straight line on the far left. If you take the black arrow and go on the other side of that line, that's how you get rid of the line on the image now. And now levels becomes how you affect the amount of like bleeding in or out that the images do. So because I want that gone, we crank that over there. The middle one can adjust if I'm just going to nuke Zabel out the image completely, or if we do this too much, it'll bring the line back. We don't want that. And then the far right one is going to bring Zabel back, but still keep it kind of bled. And you can just adjust. Again, it's your at that point how you want it to do. So you kind of do that based off of how you would like it. Let's say we like that. Boom. Okay. Now we got all this space over here. So that's where we're gonna go, and we're gonna grab Lucy. So we are going to take Lucy and we're gonna throw her back on here on the top. Same thing. We're gonna resize it a little bit since she's over to the side here. Don't worry if you're doing an image, it's like, okay, but it takes up the whole image. There's nothing over there. Just make sure when you take the gradient layer, you go back over again. So we're going to walk it through a second time because repetition is helpful for memory, okay? On the layer, go to the layer tab, go down to layer mask, go to reveal all. Now the granite tool, which is where the paint bucket tool should also be, grab the granite tool, right? Go to this side now. Since we're putting Lucy over here, we want to grab from basically right to left instead of left to right. It depends on that a little bit. It also can work up and down too. We're just not going to do that at the moment. This video is already going to be like an hour long. And we just kind of grab and we go all the way over as far as we want. Now again, fading issues. That's weird. But again, before you go off the layer, go back to the layers tab. My bad. Go back to the image tab, adjustments, levels. And then you adjust the levels accordingly. So we're going to turn this one down because we can get Digi back in there in the middle and get the line out the way. But Lucy's now fading from existence. What the heck? That's evil. So we'll take the far right one and kind of bring her back. And then kind of do like that. And then ta-da! That's how you would bleed 3 images. Or it could be 2 images. It could be half-half in the middle together. That's also why I tend to put black as the background. Because if you don't have a background image, obviously, it would look like this. And maybe that's the effect you're going for. Like maybe you're putting text in the middle there, right? It's like, oh, versus, or something like that, right? I don't know why. Bald Chiaki versus OG Chiaki. Here we go. Text versus VS. Doing this on the fly here. I'm not saying that's exactly what would happen, but like it's when if you're making your own thumbnails or you're making thumbnails for a client, it could work completely different. But that's maybe a reason why you would want to do that. But if you don't want to do that, you got to make sure to have that image there. I would recommend putting the middle image on the furthest background though, because if you put it on the front, you can't gradient from 2 different directions on the same layer. Or maybe you could, depending on the version of Photoshop that you're using. Again, I'm doing like no plugins, no extra stuff. It's just basic Photoshop that we're doing these in. So that is one way to do that. There are other ways. Artists can sound off, of course, too. They could probably have other ideas as well. But I'm trying to also make it somewhat beginner friendly. I don't know if I've done a great job doing that, but that's an idea of how you could do that. And then if you want to, we'll get rid of the text layer. You can merge all these layers together and then you can adjust the lighting on all of them accordingly together, instead of like one at a time. That's just not good. So like with Final Fantasy 14, there is an extra step I do, but thumbnails also have to be under 2 megabytes or they won't let you upload it. And so this next thing that I'm going to show you might risk making the file size too big, and I currently don't have a workaround for that except for not to use this effect that I'm about to show you on everything. Sometimes maybe just use it on like the foreground or just the background. But let's say I threw that in there, right? That's the background image I wanted to use. One thing that I've liked doing lately, especially because when I do Final Fantasy 14 thumbnails, I use Steam's art for like our characters on it. And so his artwork, his style works pretty well with this as well. On the layer, I like to do this thing called, go down to artistic, go to film grain, and I usually leave it at like 2. And it creates this kind of neat little effect on the background, but also the foreground. Let me grab a character real quick. That works. Let's say it's Capstan being abandoned again, even though they've never been abandoned, and they've never even said they've been abandoned. That's all a figment of all of y'all's imagination. Let's just, for some reason, for simplistic sake, that was the thumbnail. I don't know why, but let's say it was. It also works on people too, and I kind of like to do it. I tweak it back and forth because, again, if you do it too much, it will definitely make your image over 2 megabytes, and YouTube doesn't like thumbnails that are over 2 megabytes. So that's kind of how I've done that. If you've kind of looked and it looks a little bit different than the straight up image, that's how. It's just basically I use film grain at level 2 on foreground and background stuff. And you can still adjust things too prior or after. So let's say I want to still do this thing where I did like this. You still add glows and all kinds of stuff, and it can look really cool. And then the fade thing is how you'll have like I'll have characters on the side, even though in the middle I might have some kind of more simplistic thing going on. That's how I've done Final Fantasy thumbnails. So if you've ever seen that, now all the tools are starting to kind of come together a bit on how things have been working. New thumbnail. So now I'm going to show you how I do the 3D text. 3D text is kind of fun and been interesting to do. I'm going to need a new background. Let's go red. Again, red biased. There you go. If you have an outfit in a game, I'm letting you know right now, it's a little bit unfair because you don't have to have red on it, but there is a good chance if you're just fishing for compliments, I will give you compliments if it's red. If it has red on it, if it's mainly red, if it has red highlights, you'll get compliments from me. There are other compliments I'll give to for other people. Don't get me wrong. I'll just admit I have a bias, but some people, they'll have like yellow and blue, but it'll look really cool. So I'll be like, you know what, that still looks pretty fire. People are guilty of this in Final Fantasy specifically, where some people, they just have really sick looking armor, doesn't have a lick of red on it. It still looks cool. However, I am going to say the red stuff does look cool in a lot of games. It's like the Matrix kind of, you know, the girl with the red dress? It's like that, except it's not like that at all, I promise. But like it is, but it's not. So for 3D text, I'm going to make the text white to make this simplistic. Let's say, shucks, what should we type? Of course, glazed. Right, let's say I was doing a Twitter video. The series ended technically, but let's say chicken nuggies. Actually, I'm going to want chicken to be its own layer and the nuggies to be their own layer. So for this effect to work, at least in my experience so far, if you're going to do multiple layers of text, you're going to want them to be their own individual text layers, even though you could just hit enter to make a new line. I'll explain why as we go on. Let's say chicken, right? So we're going to make that a little bit bigger. And for this, now this is very specific. Opacity 100%, angle 90%, distance 0, spread 100, and the size has to at least be 15. Now you can copy and paste that, so you can like right click on the text layer, duplicate, so you can save all the effects that you do on something, and then all you have to do is click on it to change the text itself to a different word. So we're going to change it to buggies? Yeah, nuggies. Okay. We're going to resize Chickum to make it right above. And for this to work, what I would also recommend is whatever layers on the top, have it go until you start seeing the layers bleed like that. You want to do it, you want to stop it right before then. So when it lines up, so I guess like right there, okay? You can resize multiple images by hitting shift and when you click on the thing and then hit control T for transform and you'll bring that up. Let's say Chickum Nuggies, okay? So first things first, in my experience, create a new layer under the text. open up the brush tool, make it something like really small, and just click like say behind the M there. And then what you're going to want to do, because that's now an image layer while these are still text layers, is you're going to want to highlight all three. So, you know, shift, click on all of this. So it's all together, merge them. Now it's an image layer. So now we can pull off some fun stuff. First of all, what I like to do at this part is duplicate the layer like 15 times. We'll be like right back, but I'm going to show you a couple first. So duplicate, and on the top one, hit transform. I use the arrow keys, go up 2, go over 2. And it's going to take a while, like I said, 15 times. So now I'm going to be right back, but it's going to be like up 2, over 2, or whatever direction you want the 3D to look to go. So it might be down, over, but not a lot. Like maybe 3 moves max is how this will work. So be right back. So it takes a while, perhaps. You know, there's like a good 15 now layers of these. 16 if you count the original layer. But now it kind of looks a bit 3D. And so if I hit merge layers, it's now all one layer. There's some more fun stuff we can do. We can, we'll take this image over here, as a matter of fact. I had that prepared already. There we go. So now we can have someone in there. We'll take this layer, however, move it over here. For now, we actually need Capstan to be smaller. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You're okay. There we go. It's like she's celebrating the chicken nuggies. All right, that's the idea here. Okay. So now that there's an image layer, you can go to layers, because you can't necessarily do this with a text layer, but you can do this with an image layer, which is why I had to use the brush tool before to be able to access all this now. So with this, again, you can do drop shadows, you can do outer glows, you can do inner glows. The thing I tend to do is stroke, and I do this twice. On the first layer, I believe, I kind of go back and forth on this, but on the first layer, I might do the one that's the color, and I might make it like 8. And then I'll duplicate that track. I'll put it behind, and on whatever layer is the back one needs to be the bigger one for this. We go back into layer style, go back to stroke, and just double the size of whatever you made this. If you made this 4, make this one 8. I made this one 8, so make this one 16, and then change it to white specifically. And like I said, you can flip-flop. Maybe you want the inner layer to be white, and you want the outer layer to be the color. So, okay, fine. We want it to be yellow. So if you want to flip-flop it, you can do like that. And then you can maybe you want the inner layer to be white. And then it looks like that. It's like, yay! That's kind of how I've done the 3D text look. Is it perfect? No, but it does get the job done. Let's say I resize this. Let's say we used this background instead. In which case the white also still doesn't work. But let's say we made Capstan front and center, like she's celebrating the chicken nuggies. All right. First of all, we'd have to bring that on top and move that down, which is another thing to bring up in this video. So if you want something to be in front of something else, it's whatever the top layer is. So if you wanted Capstan in front of the text, for whatever reason, you'd have to move that layer that Capstan's on in front of the text, and then vice versa. If you want these, which you can just merge into one layer if you like how it looks, boom, you would do that. If you want the text to be different colors, you can do the gradient thing we talked about before you even, make it an image and then duplicate it a bunch of times. Once it's an image, you can change the colors of the letters themselves, but if you try and gradient layer, it's going to gradient layer the whole layer, so the drop shadow too. So like, let's say I wanted the chicken part to be red to match the hair, right? You can now go in and click on the white of the letters, and it will change the letters now for you to that. But if you want to have it be different colors before then, you got to do that before you actually type and then expand all that out, kind of like we showed before. At this point, it might be time to conclude the video. I am apologizing for it being somewhat long, but I wanted to go over like everything that I usually do when I make a thumbnail. And if there's any questions, of course, feel free to ask them in the comment section down below. We did the bleed, we've done the eyes, we've done the eye glow, we've done 3D text, we've done colors, we've done how to, blend stuff together, we've done how to maybe remove stuff, even use the pen tool to cut stuff out. That one's a huge one, as a matter of fact. We've done a lot of that stuff at this point, and it's been pretty good. The one thing I will say to conclude this video, though, is when it comes to thumbnails and titles are still king on YouTube. So a couple things a reminder first, zoom out the image when you're done making your thumbnail to see kind of how it looks when it's small, because it's going to be like, on a mobile phone? How does it look on mobile? If it looks great here, but you can't really read it on mobile, there's a problem. 2, make a thumbnail and title that's going to entice somebody to want to click. I'm not saying clickbait straight up, but that is part of the point, is to make something that someone's going to go, hey, I need to know more about this. Whatever the title or thumbnail is, it's giving me information that like piques my interest. It gives me intrigue. So I gotta know more. I gotta know more. And then when that happens though, make sure your video actually delivers on what you pique their interest for, or else that's when it becomes clickbait. If you're saying something wild happens, but then the wild thing happens, that's not clickbait. Maybe it's sensationalization at best, but it's still truthful, so people tend to respond positively because they're like, oh, I clicked for this and I did get this. There was a demand for something and you supplied it. That's essentially, it's like a marketing thing, business and stuff. That's kind of how that works. Colors can be helpful. Make sure colors contrast. Colors can be the same, but maybe throw like a drop shadow if it looks like it's like red on red. But like maybe that's the point. It's supposed to be red on red. Like I know something I did for a VR chat thumbnail for the New Year's episodes, for example. We're going to leave Capstan here. Actually, Capstan, you're going to be very helpful for this. We're going to put Capstan still being excited. But let's say behind Capstan on the white layer, I wanted to use blue. So we'll go back to the brush tool. And there's different versions over here too. There's the hardness, there's the softness, there's this one. This one's kind of funky. It kind of looks like paint strokes. So I'll do this real quick behind Capstan, right? Let's say we did this, right? Behind her. She's like, yeah, cool. And then like we make a new layer for text, and then the text doesn't even really need a lot of editing to it. We just go text layer. I'm gonna hide Capstan for a second. Chicken nuggies. Transform tool. Okay, real quick on the transform tool. If you want to turn stuff, when you have the transform tool, so Control T, go to the corners, like hover outside the corners, and the arrows should be curved. And so when you press and hold, that's how you're gonna get things to move in like, you know, a slant, or this way or that way, if you ever want to do something like that. So for this, we want to do that. Make sure to always hit enter when you're done transforming. That's how that works. Let's make this bigger. By having this like this, we don't actually need to really do anything with the text. We can just do that. Now, if you want Capstan in front, that's fine. Sometimes you see all the big Let's Players do it sometimes too, where they have the character in the forefront and then maybe even still have words or the name of the game behind them, and they expect you to be able to read it, hopefully. That's how that's done, is you do like that. So you guys know it says Chicken Nuggies because you've just been part of the process of making the thumbnail. It could be a little risky if that's not the case, but you take a shot and you experiment and you see what works. Like maybe instead of the white background, I do the dark background. Can't really see Capstan that well suddenly now, but like maybe that's how that works. That's how I did it, like I said, in the recent New Year's that we went down, where I put like cursed or something, and I'll just get the thumbnail 1 second. Yeah, it was this one where I said cursed. Actually, let me show you how to do glowing text like that to conclude the video. But let's go over some quick things real quick, because it's kind of like that, right? This, now that I've explained all these things, you can look at this thumbnail and you know how I made it. I took a background from the fireworks, from when the fireworks were happening in the world. I blurred it. I took people and I used the pen tool to cut them out, or like with Battle and Graphics case, the green screen. Put them in here. I lined a lot of people with a certain color glow and then had like the stroke effect for the glow too. On Kakashi's Sharingan Eye, I did a red glow on that because I was like, why not? I did the slanted text. You don't even have to necessarily use the brush tool. You can just use like a new layer. Like I could have did new layer. So let me hide Capstan real quick. Let me hide the text, or let me keep the text. Let's bring back like red. So on top of that layer, I could have went new layer, filled it with black, and then resize this whole layer now into a bar by dragging it down and then turning it until it's behind Chicken Nugget. There we go. That's a little off, but you know, pressed for time a little bit, and then you kind of just extend it out, and then that's a way you can do that. And then you can have that instead, and then we can bring back Capstan. That's one way you can do that. That's how I did that one. And then there was this one, so I did this with this too. It was the Audience Anarchy one, where I did this one. Now you can start to see how I've done these things in previous thumbnails, and it starts to maybe hopefully make more sense. But I did realize I did do like a glowing effect for the text here. So we're going to do that to round the video out, and then some final thoughts, and then we're going to call the video good. Boop. Put Capstan in the middle. We're going to grab a picture of like McDonald's. Control T. Resize the image. So for glowing text specifically, I tend to use it mostly in Final Fantasy thumbnails as well. what you're going to want to do is before you, or when you go to type your text, you go to your text layer, change it to the color you're going to want to use to glow, but like a little darker. So for the sake of this, because McDonald's uses like red and gold, we're going to be using a darker yellow. So maybe like an even orange almost, but not quite, but like, you know, a little darker of a yellow. We'll go here and we'll make it simple. We'll say yay. We'll say that's what's being said. That's the emotion being conveyed in this, right? Yay. That's not yay. That's very not yay of you. What was that? What bit? All right, buddy. I'll see you after the function. So now that you have it, you go to your layers. Now for this, what you're going to want to do is just go immediately straight to your inner and outer glows. So let's go. Outer glow is going to be yellow. Inner glow is going to be the big one, which is also going to be yellow. They have to be the same color. So if it's yellow, for example, yellow and yellow. And then you kind of take the size and you go as far in as you want until you kind of get that effect on the edges like that. And then to solidify that, you go to stroke, and then you can also make that yellow or a little bit lighter. I tend to make it actually white or black, so that way it kind of does stand out a little bit. Maybe more of a gray situation. I'm going to go like with a really, really light yellow, like a very light yellow. There's other colors you can use, of course, and so if you want to change it, you know, go back to the text layer, be like, okay, well, what if we want it to be red, since McDonald's also uses red? You can obviously mix match, but for that specific look, it all has to be basically the same color, but different shades. So let's say we made this like a darker red, and let's say we wanted this to be red, because, you know, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, oh god, red, and then red. It's not the easiest to see, so you want to make sure that the back color is light enough, because if it's too dark like this, it doesn't really work, but it's because the base red color needs to actually be lighter. So it's a little bit trial and error too, so that needs to definitely be lighter. And the reason that needs to be lighter is then because then you can make these lighter as well, since it's supposed to be, you know, a glow color. So make this a light red, make the inner glow a light red, and then there you go. That's what we're looking for, more like. And that's how you do that. You've seen it a lot when you see people make, you know, like they put lightning in the background. So let me go in front of the McDonald's real quick here. Hold on. So you grab a lightning one, like a lightning back. If you've ever seen this, I'm just gonna walk you through that real quick as we conclude the video. Where like you'll see people, they'll drop the lightning in the background, like this, right? So you have the yay. Oh, we gotta change it to like we have to do the space background. We gotta up the brightness and contrast. So we turn the contrast like this. We turn the brightness, you know, like that. Then we radial blur it. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. Filter, blur, radial blur. So it's under motion blur because it's in alphabetical order. Zoom, best quality. Turn the amount up to like 20. Boom. You know, go back to the yay. For this to really work, the yay has to be like the same color as the lightning. So now we go back into the text layer as we clicked it. We go over this, and now we're going to be like, okay, you're going to be this color, but darker. Because this won't work if we make it as light as the lightning. Also, I know I'm colorblind, but that's not correct. That's not grabbing the image. So we'll make you like that, and then we'll make the outer glow color the same as the lightning. So you will, in fact, be like that. And the inner glow will in fact be like that, and then the stroke will definitely be the same as like this, but lighter. And then boom, suddenly you have yay. You can't really see it that well, so you could just slap on like a drop shadow, because you do want the text to in fact be seen. And then like we talked about earlier, you can do the spread behind it, and then you can see the yay chicken nuggies. There it is. I just randomly remember, because this used to be a thing people used to do like a ton, and people kind of still do it as well. That's how you do that. So there's a couple different ways to do that. And again, it's all for grabbing people's attention. Even this, right? Like if you didn't use text, there's a world where just captioned by themselves looking super happy and excited about something, combined with whatever the title you make, is enough to grab someone in. Not always, but there's a chance that it could be. So that's always a possibility. I think because I have, I think her eyes are going to be invisible for this video. I just realized because I have the filter on it. I think it gets rid of green. There we go. We brought free Capson's eyes. Yeah, exactly. There we go. But yeah, that's kind of how you can do that. That's how you can do. We went over like a good 7 different thumbnail styles. And again, if you have questions and you want to hit me up in the comments, you're somebody I know, of course, you want to reach out, like shoot a Discord DM or something. You're like, yeah, I kind of want to make thumbnails, not even videos, but just thumbnails. But you didn't explain this exactly super clearly. I'm down to, you know, info dump some more. I just know this video's been a bit too long, so we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you so much for watching this video. But again, that's basically the goal of thumbnails, is you gotta grab people. You gotta grab people to make them watch what is then hopefully a great video. There's a ton of people, and it's unfortunate it happens to everybody really, where you'll make a good video, but if the thumbnail isn't great enough to get people in the door, they'll never see it. And then maybe you change the thumbnail and people finally see it and like, man, this video is great. Where has it been? It's like, it's always been there. It's just the thumbnail wasn't quite there. It was too hard to see on mobile. It was this or that. Things didn't contrast well enough, etc., etc. So thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button. But I don't know which video will be next. We'll just have to wait and see. So until this time, take care and enjoy chicken nuggets responsibly. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.